everybody. Really excited to be talking to you today at Microsoft Build 2023. And today what we're going to be talking about is how you can best manage your server estate using Azure Automanage. So I'm really excited to be walking you through some of the innovations that we've been working on Azure Automanage machine configuration, Azure Automanage machine best practices, and then we're going to be going over some demos as well as a little bit on some of our future plans. So with that, we'll kick it off. So the first product we're going to be talking about today is Azure Automanage machine configuration. Now this was previously known as guest configuration, but regardless of the name, what we're really talking about here is the most modern DSC tooling that's provided by Microsoft Azure. Before we get into our feature set, what we're going to be talking about first is an objective. And that objective is that it should be simple in Azure to configure settings inside machines using ARM, the Azure Resource Manager. So with this goal in mind, we're going to start by talking about some of the features that we knew we'd have to iterate on in order to kind of fulfill this objective. So the first feature that we're going to be talking about is first-class support for Linux and Windows. So what I'm really excited to be talking to you about today is that machine config represents the first generally available platform to run DSC across Linux servers. The second major feature is support for Azure native VMs or Arc-enabled servers. So we're going to be talking a lot about Arc in the presentation today. And when we talk about Arc, we're talking about a lot of different things. So this includes servers that are running in on-premises or private data centers. These are servers running in other clouds. And we're going to be talking about how you can manage them in the same way that you can with your Azure native VMs for a consistent management landscape. The third thing that we're excited about is advanced reporting. So not only are you able to know the configuration of your servers today, but you're able to see the configuration of your servers looking back for up to 14 days. And then this fourth one is going to be familiar to you folks who have worked with Automation DSC or the DSC extension before, but using machine config, we now support multiple configurations for individual machines. So instead of one monolithic configuration representation, we're going to be able to more granularly tackle the challenge of managing your servers with many different complex requirements. The fifth one here is built-in policy content. So we know that there are a lot of scenarios where you're really interested in authoring your own configuration content for those more custom scenarios, but we also have provided built-in policy content which focuses on operational and security best practices for managing your servers. And the sixth one is that custom configuration support. So as much as we can try to tackle the full set of scenarios that you're facing in terms of managing your server environments, we know that your best practices are going to be sometimes a little bit different from this. So I'm really excited to walk you through some of the advancements in the tooling that we provide for custom configuration support. So these features wouldn't be anything without the full list of our experiences. So we provide first-class support within the Azure portal, CLI, PowerShell, Bicep, and Terraform. So we really want to make sure that we can meet you where you are in terms of your overall server management journey. So with all these features in mind, today we're going to be talking about Automanage machine configuration, which represents the first-class way to audit and configure OS, app, or workload level settings as code. And so again, this is sort of a summary of the pillars that I talked about in the last slide. But going through these again, Automanage machine configuration allows you to dynamically assign configurations to Windows and Linux machines running in Azure, but also anywhere else through Arc-enabled servers. We provide continuous auditing and enforcement of these configuration settings with that at-scale and granular reporting. So we'll be going through some of the milestones that we hit over the last year in terms of what this continuous remediation looks like, but this is one that we're really excited about. The third one here is deploying built-in content, which is provided by Microsoft. And again, I'm really excited to walk you through some of the recent releases to our built-in content, which you'll notice have a keen focus on aligning with the Azure Security Benchmark and server security best practices. The fourth one is that we know that, again, we can't encompass the full set of server best practices for you, so you're able to bring your own best practice configurations into Azure through custom artifact deployment, leveraging PowerShell DSC. So one milestone that we were able to hit in the last year was the general availability of our remediation capabilities. So in addition to being able to audit, you're able to configure OS, app, or workload level settings as code. And you can interact with this feature of our service in 3 different ways. So these are called our auditing modes. And the first one is audit. So this will report on the state of your machine and compare the setting that you're evaluating within your server in guest to the setting that's been described within the configuration. So this is audit only, and we'll report on the state of the machine, but we won't go ahead and make any changes. The second one is apply and monitor. So we'll apply the settings that you've described within your configuration document to your machine, and then we'll monitor for changes. But in the event of configuration drift, we won't go ahead and make any automatic changes on your behalf. The third one is apply and autocorrect. So in the event of configuration drift, we will again apply those settings to the machine. So not only in the event of deployment, but in the event of that continuous monitoring, we'll make sure that we apply these configuration settings in the event of any configuration drift, guaranteeing you that these settings will remain in the expected and desired state. Awesome. So we've talked a lot about continuous monitoring, but what does this look like from a lifecycle perspective? So whether you're assigning a configuration through Azure Policy, through Microsoft Defender for Cloud, through Azure Automanage, or natively through ARM or bicep templates, the first step here is always a get method. So we'll audit the compliance of your resource relative to the configuration package. The next step here is test. So we'll see, is the resource compliant with the settings as described within that configuration package or document? In the event that it is, then awesome. We're going to return this compliance result as well as a brief reasons property, letting you know that that desired state is as expected. And we'll return these results to both the Azure Resource Manager and the Azure Resource Graph. Now, what happens if it's not compliant? So if this is a set assignment, then what we'll do is we'll check. And if it's not, we'll return that result as well as a brief reasons property, which is intended to help you kind of find the next step towards making that manual remediation. And we'll, again, publish those results back to ARM and ARG. If this is a set assignment, then what we'll do is execute the steps for remediation as they're specified within the configuration package. And then what's next? We'll go back and audit the compliance of your resource. And so this cycle of get, test, set is available at configurable time intervals up to 15 minutes to an hour. So how does publishing a custom configuration work? Well, we have some great PowerShell tooling that we've been iterating on over the last year, and I just wanted to show a quick visual of what this looks like in practice. So going through the chart, the first thing that you need to do is make sure that the guest configuration PowerShell module has been installed. After it has, then what you're able to do is leverage the new guest configuration package commandlet to package your configuration document. So that MOF file, as well as a corresponding set of DSC resources, representing the get, set, test, and reasons properties. After this, you can leverage some of the AZ storage commandlets to upload that configuration package, which will be represented in a zip file to blob storage, or it can be any storage location that's publicly accessible via HTTPS. And then, again, how do you turn this into a custom policy to deploy at scale? Well, we provide tooling to do this through the new guest configuration policy commandlet. So through passing in a reference to that location in blob storage, we will help you to generate that custom policy definition, which you can then publish to a scope of your choosing, to a subscription that you have, and then specify an auditing mode, and will allow you to publish and assign that custom policy at any scope of your choosing. So I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit today about some of the new releases that we've been working on. And as I go through these in order, you'll see that there's a clear focus on server security posture, expanded distro support, and enriched PowerShell integration. So looking at this, we're really excited to announce that we've published some great built-in content, again with a focus on server security posture. And the first thing here is being able to disable local user authentication. So this will allow you to ensure that your servers are only accessible through an Azure Active Directory account, or in the event of an exception, a list of explicitly allowed users. The second one here is being able to set secure communication protocols, so to set, monitor, and enforce TLS 1.2. We know that there are countless applications and services that have really strict requirements on TLS 1.2. And we know that especially for those on-prem servers, this is a really arduous process to do manually. So we're really excited to be able to roll this out through a built-in Azure policy to make it easy to keep your servers compliant and aligned with TLS 1.2. The third one here is improvements to the Azure Compute Security Baseline. So I'm really excited about this one, and we'll be going over a couple of improvements that were made to the overall experience here. But in the past year, there have been alignments to more closely align the content in the Azure Compute Security Baseline with the newly released standards for CIS Cloud Compute. So we'll be going over this from an experience perspective in a little bit, but we're really excited about this one as well. The second one is expanded distro support. So this is something that we're constantly looking at growing, and this year we've announced support for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, RHEL 9, Mariner 1, Mariner 2, Almond 9, and Rocky 9. And then outside of this distro support, we also have another Linux release that I'll be going over in the next slide, but again, really excited about making it easier for Linux customers to leverage machine config. So the third thing here is enhanced PowerShell support. So we're really excited about these two. And that first item here is that native full support for Windows PowerShell modules and DSC resources. So through implicit remoting, you'll be able to leverage all of the built-in modules and built-in DSC resources from Windows PowerShell, which does include Windows Feature. The second thing here is support for additional parameter types in custom DSC resources. Previously, we were only able to support string parameter types, but through these improvements, we now provide support for strings, floats, doubles, arrays, and booleans. So what we're trying to do is really expand the total set of scenarios that you're able to manage leveraging custom configurations in PowerShell DSC. Awesome. So I mentioned that we had another release on the Linux side that we were excited about. So I'm really excited to let you all know that we now have a new open source repo, and it's called NX Tools. And the main goal of NX Tools is to make managing Linux servers easier for PowerShell users. So this module is a collection of class-based DSC resources for commonly used Linux actions and built-in machine config packages. So some of these built-in resources include user and group management, so you can create and delete local users and set properties to existing groups, file system operations, being able to set, remove, and replace file content, setting file permissions, etc., package management, service management, and archive operations. So these are some of the built-in resources that we're providing, and we're really excited that this will be able to roll out to our full distro support. And again, this is a newly released open source module, so please open any issues, try it out, and let us know what you think. We're really excited to be working closely with the DSC community here, and your feedback is super valued. So, how do you use these built-in resources through NX Tools and the resources like Windows Feature in production to roll these out at scale? Well, we're super excited to be partnering with the Azure Arc Jumpstart to provide step-by-step guidelines for independent Azure Arc management scenarios. So you'll see that these are a list of real-life examples that will include automation, code samples, screenshots, a sandbox environment to try things out, not in production, and really advanced diagrams. So through Azure Arc Jumpstart, we have newly released modules that will walk you through how to create custom machine config packages for Windows, custom machine config packages for Linux, which will highlight how to use some of those NX Tools modules in production, and then enable Automanage on Azure Arc, and then enable Azure Automanage on Azure Arc using built-in profiles. So we'll be going through a couple of these examples as well in the demos section, but I just really want to highlight that this is a great one-stop shop for being able to have those advanced examples and sort of real-life scenarios on how to use the service. Awesome. So we've talked a lot about how to manage in-guest scenarios and in-guest configurations, but how do you describe the best practice of your Azure management services? Okay, right. So we've talked a lot about how to manage in-guest scenarios and in-guest management, but how do you describe the desired state of your Azure management services in the control plane environment? So I'm really excited to be talking to you about Microsoft Azure Automanage machine best practices. So managing infrastructure in the cloud today requires you to keep up with a lot. What services should you be onboarding to? How do you know when new updates have been rolled out to services? How do you ensure that all of the dependencies have been met? So that's where Automanage really comes in here. IT management is complex. There are OpEx costs with training teams to have all of the subject matter expertise to leverage services. How do you make sure that all of your apps and data remain secure against growing security threats? And this, again, comes with that immense administrative burden. How do you make sure that your servers that are on-prem and in multiple clouds are aligned with the way that you're managing your Azure virtual machines? And again, keeping pace with cloud innovation. So when a new service becomes available, how do you know if this is something that you should adopt or not? So that's where Automanage really comes in. So through alignment to the cloud adoption framework, we'll make sure that we do all of the heavy lifting so it becomes simple for you to understand the best way for you to manage your virtual machines in Azure and anywhere else through Arc-enabled Server. So these services map to the cloud adoption framework and will ensure that your virtual machines are able to remain conformant to all of these Azure management services, and will also make sure that all the dependencies have been met. So it's as simple as being able to point, click, set, and forget once you've enabled Automanage to automate the configuration of your Azure management services. Awesome. So again, we're really kind of focused on that point, click, set, and forget for best practice configurations for, again, Windows and Linux servers. And we're also, again, aligning to that idea of automatic drift remediation for management and continuity and security. And we also have a really innovative set of features that'll support Automanage capabilities for Windows Server Azure Edition, which include hot patching. Awesome. So now we're going to head into the demos, and we're going to talk about how to deploy server security baselines through Azure Automanage, and also how to deploy built-in policies to configure secure communication protocols at scale. So now we're going to head into the portal. So now I've navigated into the Automanage Center, which you're able to find through looking up Azure Automanage in the All Services view. And what we're going to do is we're going to click into Managing Your Configuration Profiles. You can also see, again, what those best practice profiles are through clicking into the built-in profiles section and viewing what these profiles look like. So you can see here that we provide the production profile services, but then you can also see that for the dev test profiles, we exclude a certain set of services because we don't think that backup is required for these non-production servers, as well as VM Insights. So let's say, for example, that you actually are only interested in a subset of these services. What we're going to do is enable a custom configuration profile, which will allow you to tailor pick the services that you're interested in onboarding and remaining conformant to. Awesome. So we're going to go in and create a profile name, and we'll call it Microsoft Build. Awesome. And we're going to put this in my demo resource group. And I really want to make sure that I've enabled backup daily. But let's say that I am actually interested in running a third-party anti-malware solution. So I'm actually not interested in the Microsoft anti-malware solution right now. I'm going to want to make sure that I've deployed machine insights monitoring, as well as auto-managed machine configuration. And then the part that I'm really excited about is you can now enforce remediation for the Azure Compute Security Baseline through Azure Automanage through toggling between the auditing modes listed here. So again, that audit-only mode, apply and monitor, and apply and autocorrect. So let's say that I want to apply and monitor these settings to make sure that when the configuration is provisioned, we'll configure these, but then again, in the event of drift, we will not automatically remediate. What I can do now is hit create, and that configuration profile will be created, but how do you deploy this at scale? So if you go into the Azure Policy Center, what you're able to do is filter to the Automanage policy category. And then from there, you're able to see a built-in policy definition to configure your virtual machines to be onboarded to Azure Automanage, leveraging a custom configuration profile. So if we click into this policy definition, you can see here that what you're able to do is specify the name of the configuration profile that you've just created within this parameter, and you can deploy this policy at scale. And all of the machines in scope for the policy will be aligned to the configuration profile that you've now created, as well as all of those Azure management services. So we're really excited about this capability through Automanage that you can deploy through Azure Policy. Now what I want to do before I go into the next demo is also just show you a little bit about what this Azure baseline is configuring. So this is an instance of the Azure Windows baseline that has been deployed to a newly provisioned marketplace image of Windows Server. And you can see that 85 of these rules are non-compliant by default. And these are everything from network rules to firewall rules to account management, etc. So you can see that the overall security posture of this virtual machine really leaves a lot to be configured. And now let's look at an instance that's been applied in apply and monitor. You can see that only one rule out of 284 is not compliant. And this is because this specific rule requires manual remediation. But 284 of these rules are coming back as compliant. So you can see that the security posture of this virtual machine is much improved versus the audit-only mode. So you can really see here the value that leveraging this baseline in apply and monitor can give you and the server security posture of your server estate. So again, kind of thinking about this from the perspective of security, there's one other built-in policy that I want to show you, and that's to configure secure communication protocols across your Windows servers. So through this policy, we're going to go ahead and assign it. What you're able to do is specify the version of TLS that you're interested in configuring across your Windows servers. So I'm just going to quickly walk through applying this and show you a little bit about how this can be applied at scale and how you can specify the necessary parameters. Awesome. So if we look into the parameters here, you can see include our connected servers, and I'm going to mark this to true because I want to make sure that my Azure virtual machines as well as my ARC-enabled servers are both pinned to the same version of TLS. And now you can see that across both client and server, the minimum server TLS version is 1.2. But let's say that I have a custom application that still requires TLS 1.1. This is something that you can specify as well. So I've gone ahead and deployed this policy, and now I just want to show you a little bit of what the compliance results look like here. You can see that leveraging the deploy if not exists functionality, you're able to, again, see that server protocol and see that client protocol, and they're both marked as compliant. And you can see here that we provide a reasons property that clearly kind of shows you why this reason is coming back as compliant. So we've made sure that older versions of SSL and TLS are absent, and we've made sure that TLS 1.2 is present. And in the event of configuration drift, or for some reason one of these settings rolled back, this would remain in compliance through the automatic remediation. So we've talked a lot today about the built-in content that we provide through Azure Policy, but I want to take it one step back and talk a little bit about, how we write these configuration resources and DSC resources required to deploy these custom policies. So I'm really excited to be talking to you today about DSC V3. So we're really reimagining the way that we think about desired state configuration and the way that we can improve the tools and the language that you use to describe the configuration of your servers. And so as we're reimagining this, we're thinking about this under a couple of different principles. So the first one is resource authoring. I've talked a lot today about DSC resources from the perspective of PowerShell-based resources, but we know that not everybody is using PowerShell. So one of the principles that we want to make sure that we're aligning the DSC V3 work to is democratizing DSC as a platform. So in addition to writing DSC resources leveraging PowerShell, you're also going to be able to author these resources using Bash. So we're really trying to expand, again, the reach of DSC and make it simple for you to use the tools and the languages that you know and love to be able to author configuration documents. So in addition to resource authoring, we're also going to be tackling configuration authoring. So today, configuration documents are authored leveraging MOF files, but we know that JSON and YAML are pervasive throughout the industry. And so we're going to be aligning the schema that's used to author configurations to ARM templates. So we're really excited to allow customers to learn a little and get a lot and make it easy for them to leverage the learnings that they're building out in the Azure Resource Manager to author configuration documents as well. The third point here is enriched tooling. So we're really excited to, again, continue to build off the investments in PowerShell and leverage IntelliSense to be able to make it easier to write these configurations and resources. And the fourth one here is at-scale deployment. So you're not leveraging DSC to apply configurations across 1 or 2 servers. We're going to be doing this at scale. So we're really excited to provide support for this through Automanage machine configuration and make it easy to author your resources, configurations, and deploy them at scale. So with that, I want to thank you all for your time. I was really excited to talk to you about some of the work we've been doing on Azure Automanage, and I hope you have a great rest of Microsoft build. Thanks.